Somewhere in your kitchen right now, there's a habit you do specifically because you're trying to be responsible. You're saving money, you're not wasting food, and that exact habit might be quietly setting off chemical changes in your leftovers that most people go their entire lives never hearing about. Sound extreme? Stay with me for the next few minutes because I'm about to walk through 5 specific foods that behave very differently the second time heat touches them, what's actually happening to them at a chemical level, and why food safety researchers take these particular 5 more seriously than almost anything else sitting in a fridge. Here's what's worth knowing before we start. Your gut and your pancreas share blood supply and inflammatory signaling with the rest of your digestive system, so repeated low-grade irritation in one place doesn't just stay contained there. It becomes part of a larger pattern your body has to keep managing. None of what follows is about one meal ruining your health. It's about repeated exposure, week after week, mostly from habits that look completely harmless. So here's a question before we go further. How many times this week did you reheat something? Actually count it in your head. Hold that number, because by the end of this, you might be surprised at how it adds up. Drop it in the comments when you're done watching. I'm curious how common this actually is. Let's start with food number 1. And I'm going to guess this one surprises you because it's something the health world has told you to eat more of for 2 decades. Think about last night's fries. The ones you covered with foil because throwing them out felt wasteful. That fried chicken wrapped up for tomorrow. What do you do the next day? Microwave? Or worse, a little fresh oil in the pan to crisp it back up. That second step, reheating oil, is where the actual problem lives. Here's the part almost nobody explains clearly. Common cooking oils, sunflower, corn, soybean, are chemically unstable under heat. Heat them once, that's manageable. Heat them a second time, and they undergo something called oxidative breakdown, producing a group of compounds called aldehydes. 2 of the most studied are 4-hydroxynonenal and malondialdehyde. You don't need to remember those names. You just need to understand what they do. These compounds are reactive. Inside your body, they can damage cell structures, including DNA, when exposure is repeated and sustained. This is genuinely established food chemistry. Researchers have studied oxidized cooking oils for years specifically because of this reactivity. What's not established, and I want to be straight with you about this, is a direct proven line from "I reheated fries in oil twice this month" to a specific cancer diagnosis. Nobody has shown that. What is well supported is that repeated exposure to these oxidation byproducts places a real measurable burden on your body's inflammatory and repair systems, and that chronic low-grade inflammation over years is a genuine risk factor across a range of health problems, including some cancers. Your pancreas specifically has to process a lot of what circulates through your bloodstream, and researchers who study organ-specific inflammation flag it as one of the more sensitive organs to sustained oxidative stress. That's the honest version of the connection, real, but a contributing factor, not a smoking gun for one specific meal. Here's something to actually sit with for a second. Pause the video right now if you need to, and think honestly. How many times in the last 2 weeks did you reheat fried food in oil, fresh or reused? Don't answer out loud, just count it. I'll wait. Got your number? Now here's the fix, and it's genuinely simple. Never reheat fried food in oil, not fresh oil, not the same oil. Use a dry oven at around 180 degrees Celsius or an air fryer. Dry heat restores crispness without any additional oxidation, and frying oil itself should be treated as single use. Fry today, dispose of it today. It sounds wasteful in the moment. It's a small trade against a habit that compounds over years. Now get ready, because food number 2 on this list is going to surprise you even more than the first one, because it's something that shows up on practically every healthiest foods list ever published. And reheating it triggers a reaction that food safety agencies have specifically flagged. I'll walk you through exactly what's happening inside that container in the next part, so stick around. Before we get into food number 2, quick question for you. Did you count last week's number when you have reheated the chicken using oil? Comment it below when you get a second. I want to see how common this really is across everyone watching. Now, picture Sunday evening. You saute a beautiful pan of spinach with garlic and olive oil. Deep green, wilted perfectly. You feel good about it? You're eating your greens, doing exactly what you're supposed to. Leftovers go into a container in the fridge. Monday lunch, you microwave it for 90 seconds. Smells the same, looks the same, tastes the same. And that's exactly the problem, because nothing about the reheating looks or smells any different, even though something real is happening chemically. Here's the mechanism. Leafy greens, spinach, kale, chard, arugula naturally contain compounds called nitrates. Fresh, completely harmless. But once cooked and left to sit, bacteria naturally present in food can begin converting some of those nitrates into nitrites. Apply heat a second time, and those nitrites can react with amino acids to form compounds called nitrosamines. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies certain nitrosamines as probable human carcinogens, and yes, they're genotoxic, meaning they can interact directly with DNA. That part is accurate and worth taking seriously. Here's the part I want to be honest with you about, though. The strength of evidence linking home-cooked reheated leafy greens specifically to meaningful nitrosamine exposure is genuinely debated among food safety researchers. Most of the strongest nitrosamine research involves cured and processed meats, not spinach reheated once in your own kitchen with proper refrigeration. Reheating greens that have been promptly refrigerated and reheated within a day or two carries meaningfully lower risk than, say, greens left out at room temperature for hours before their second heating, since that's when bacterial nitrate to nitrite conversion has the most time to occur. So here's the practical, honest takeaway rather than a scare. The real risk driver isn't, did you reheat spinach? It's, how long did it sit unrefrigerated, and how many times did it get reheated? Every additional heating cycle is where any nitrosamine formation would compound. That part is genuine chemistry, not a metaphor. Quick pause. Actually think about this one. How many times this week did you cook leafy greens, and how long did they sit out before going in the fridge? Take a second, really think about it, then keep watching. The fix is simple and doesn't require giving up leftover greens. Refrigerate cooked greens within an hour of cooking. If you're eating them cold the next day, in a grain bowl, a salad, a wrap, there's no second heat involved at all, so this entire concern disappears. If you do want them warm, reheat once, and only what you're actually eating that meal, not a full batch reheated repeatedly across the week. Now, food number 3, and I think this is the most surprising one we'll cover, because the food itself has no strong flavor, no smell, nothing your senses can pick up on to warn you. Think about a big pot of rice made a few days ago. Completely normal, most households do this. But from the moment that rice stopped cooking and started cooling on your counter, something has been quietly happening inside it that most people have genuinely never been warned about. Meet Bacillus cereus, a bacterium present in raw rice from essentially any supermarket. Cooking kills the active bacteria. It does not kill the spores. Spores are hardened survival structures certain bacteria produce specifically to survive conditions that would otherwise kill them, boiling included. They sit dormant, completely undetectable by smell or taste, waiting for the temperature to drop into their ideal range for multiplying, which happens to be roughly the temperature of your kitchen counter as rice cools after cooking. Once that happens, the spores activate, multiply, and produce toxins. Here's the detail that matters most. One of those toxins is heat stable. Microwaving your rice the next day kills the live bacteria, but it does nothing to the toxin already produced while they were active. It survives reheating completely intact. Think of it like a small factory that produced toxic waste overnight. You shut the factory down the next morning, sure, but the barrels it already made before shutdown are still sitting in the warehouse. Turning off the machines doesn't empty the barrels. In part 3, I'll walk through exactly what that means for your gut and what the actual fix looks like, so don't go anywhere. Before we continue with the rice, here's something to think about. How many days has the rice in your fridge right now actually been sitting there? 1 day? 3? A week? Actually check your memory on this, then keep watching, because the answer matters more than you'd think. Repeated low-level exposure to bacterial toxins, even without a dramatic bout of food poisoning every time, contributes to ongoing low-grade gut inflammation. Researchers studying what's sometimes called the gut-pancreas axis have documented that your gut and pancreas share blood supply, lymphatic drainage, and inflammatory signaling, so chronic gut irritation doesn't stay isolated. It becomes part of a wider inflammatory load your body has to manage. Again, that's a genuine, documented physiological connection. And again, it's a contributing factor across years of exposure, not a direct one meal causes cancer claim. The fix here is genuinely simple and backed by mainstream food safety guidance, not just this video. Cool cooked rice within about an hour of cooking. Spread it shallow in a wide container rather than piling it deep. More surface area cools faster, and faster cooling means less time in the temperature range where those spores can activate. Eat refrigerated rice within about 24 hours. When you reheat it fully until steaming hot all the way through. Eat it, and don't put reheated leftovers back in the fridge for a second round. These aren't complicated rules. Most people have simply never been told them clearly. Now, food number 4. Nearly every household eats this multiple times a week, and the danger here comes from a specific quirk of one very common kitchen appliance that creates invisible pockets inside food that look completely fine from the outside. You made roasted chicken thighs last night, cooked through properly, golden, safe. Today at lunch, 2 pieces go on a plate, 2 minutes in the microwave, you touch the outside, it's hot, you eat. Completely normal Tuesday in millions of homes. And that exact process, quick microwave, spot check the outside, is where the risk actually lives. Here's what a lot of people don't realize. A microwave doesn't heat food evenly the way an oven does. It excites water molecules, and different parts of the same piece of chicken have different water content, density, and fat distribution. Some sections reach bacteria-killing temperatures. Other sections, sometimes just a centimeter away, stay right in the range where bacteria survive and can actually multiply. These are called cold spots, and they're invisible and unfeelable from the outside. 2 bacteria make this a genuine concern with poultry specifically. Salmonella and Campylobacter, both present in raw chicken at meaningful rates, both reliably killed by proper initial cooking, but capable of recontaminating cooked food afterward through hands, counters, or utensils. A cold spot in reheated chicken is a warm, moist, protein-rich environment, not hostile to bacteria at all, closer to an incubator. A salmonella infection isn't a mild inconvenience. High fever, severe cramping, sustained vomiting and diarrhea, your whole immune system mobilizing to respond. And while that response is happening, your pancreas is genuinely part of the broader inflammatory picture, not an isolated bystander. Full-blown food poisoning is the dramatic version. The quieter concern researchers point to is repeated. Smaller exposures, not enough to floor you, but enough to keep your gut in a state of low-grade chronic inflammation over time. Be honest with yourself on this one for a second. When you reheat chicken, do you actually check that it's steaming hot all the way through the thickest part, or do you touch the outside and assume the middle matches? That gap between assumption and reality is exactly where the risk sits. The fix: oven at 175 degrees Celsius, covered tightly with foil, 15 to 20 minutes. Trapped moist heat reaches every part evenly, no cold spots. If you have to use a microwave, cut the chicken into small uniform pieces, use medium power rather than max, pause halfway through to rearrange everything, then let it rest covered for 2 full minutes after heating. Or simplest of all, eat it cold, shred it into a salad. 0 reheating, 0 cold spots, 0 added risk. One more food to go, and this last one is genuinely unique because it carries 2 completely separate, well-documented risks at the same time, from a single leftover container. I'll walk through both in the final part, so stick around for that one. It might be the most important of the 5. Before we get into food number 5, one last question to sit with. Across everything we've covered so far, oil, greens, rice, chicken, how many of these habits describe your actual week? Really count it, then drop that number in the comments because I guarantee you're not the only one surprised by the total. Food number 5, the humble baked or boiled potato. This one's unique on the list because it carries two completely separate, independently well-documented risks, and most people have only ever heard of one, if that. Picture this. You baked potatoes for dinner, wrapped the extras tightly in foil while they were still warm to keep them fresh, and left them on the counter or even in a warm oven for a few hours before finally putting them in the fridge, or maybe you forgot entirely and found them the next morning. Here's why that specific combination, foil plus warmth plus time, is genuinely dangerous. Not exaggerated, not theoretical. Wrapping a warm potato tightly in foil creates a low-oxygen, moist, warm environment inside that wrapping. That's precisely the environment a bacterium called Clostridium botulinum needs to grow and produce one of the most potent toxins known, the toxin responsible for botulism. This isn't speculative food blog content. Public health agencies have documented real, confirmed cases of botulism traced directly back to foil-wrapped potatoes left at unsafe temperatures, including outbreaks investigated and published by health departments. Botulism is serious. It affects your nervous system, and left untreated, it can be life-threatening. This is one of the few food safety risks on this list where the danger is acute, not just a long-term cumulative concern. The fix is genuinely simple. Never store a foil-wrapped potato at room temperature. Refrigerate it promptly. Ideally unwrapped or loosely wrapped within about 2 hours of cooking. Once refrigerated properly, the risk essentially disappears. The second danger with potatoes is completely different and shows up specifically when you reheat and recrisp them. Roasted potatoes, hash browns, home fries brought back to life in a hot oven or air fryer until the edges go extra golden and crispy. That extra crisping at high heat on starchy food is exactly the condition under which a compound called acrylamide forms. Acrylamide forms through a well-studied chemical reaction between certain sugars and an amino acid called asparagine, both naturally present in potatoes when they're exposed to high, dry heat, roasting, frying, and yes, aggressive reheating that recrisps the surface. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies acrylamide as a probable human carcinogen based primarily on animal studies, with human evidence still considered more limited and mixed. Regulatory agencies, including the FDA, have issued specific guidance on minimizing acrylamide formation in home cooking, which tells you this isn't a fringe concern, it's something food safety regulators actively monitor. The practical fix here. When reheating roasted or fried potatoes, use moderate heat rather than max power crisping, and don't push for that extra dark, well-browned edge. Lighter golden is genuinely lower risk than deeply browned or blackened. This applies to reheating far more than to the original cooking, since it's the repeated high heat exposure that compounds the effect. So here's where that leaves us. Across all 5 foods, none of these are about one meal ruining your health, and none of them mean you need to stop eating leftovers. That's neither realistic nor necessary. What they add up to is this: cumulative, repeated exposure, oxidized reheated oils, nitrosamine-forming greens left out too long, heat-stable bacterial toxins in improperly cooled rice, bacterial cold spots in unevenly reheated chicken, and acute botulism risk plus acrylamide formation with potatoes places a real, measurable burden on your body's inflammatory systems over months and years. Your pancreas, along with your gut and liver, ends up doing a disproportionate share of managing that burden, and chronic inflammation is a genuine, well-established risk factor across a range of health conditions, cancer included, even where a single direct cause and effect line to one specific food habit isn't something the research can honestly claim. The 5 fixes, altogether. Never reheat fried food in oil. Dry heat only. Refrigerate cooked greens within an hour. Reheat once at most. Cool rice fast and eat it within a day. Reheat chicken evenly with no cold spots, oven over microwave when possible, and keep potatoes out of warm foil wrapping, refrigerate promptly, and go easy on the recrisping. None of these are complicated. Most people have simply never had them explained clearly and honestly without the scare tactics in one place. If this changed how you'll handle your leftovers this week, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.